these fun scrunchies, you will need a few things for supplies. You'll need a 1/4 inch wide elastic, a 7-inch long piece roughly, 2 safety pins, which will be for running the elastic through. Obviously your sewing machine unless you're hand stitching, and then common sewing materials like thread, pins, scissors. And then for your fabric piece, you'll need between 4 and 5 inch wide by 20 to 24 inch long piece of fabric. It depends on how scrunchy you want the scrunchie and how wide you want it as well for the width. Let's start by cutting the fabric. First, we're gonna take this fabric 1/4. I can use about 4 scrunchies per one, which is really nice, because then you can get a lot out of the use of one. They're fairly cheap at the store as well. It gives you a good option. We'll open it up. So what I like doing here is I'll normally do 4 scrunchies going lengthwise here. Okay, to begin, you can really use multiple different widths of fabric. That's the nice part about scrunchies. You can make a lot of different sizes. The width we're determining right now, which I'm going to use, is 4.5. Will it be how poofy or how not poofy the scrunchie actually is? So we're going to start by measuring out. We can use the measuring underneath here to measure out. Go to the 4.5, then we can line up our dots right here. Right there, we want to make sure it's nice and smooth. And we can take our rotary cutter and make a nice straight line. This does work with scissors as well, if you do need to use scissors. The nice part is there is a lot of room for error, so this is a great first project as well for learning how to sew. There's plenty of errors that could be made, whether it be in cutting or slightly in stitching, that you really can't tell by the time the scrunchie is actually done. So here's our first strip. So you can see kind of the width pictured, kind of about that wide is what we're going for the scrunchies. So now I have my pins right here. We're gonna start by pinning it. You'll always want to pin with the side you want facing out, facing in. So you're gonna make a sleeve like this. So you're gonna fold it in half, lengthwise like a hot dog. And then about 1.5 inches roughly in, you're gonna put a pin. This is gonna mark where you stop and start sewing. So a lot of times I like putting like a double pin so then you know where it is that you're actually stopping. Then you're gonna pin matching the edges with each other along the entire way. Till you get to the other side, and then likewise, just like the last one, you're going to mark about 1.5 inches or so in with an extra mark of some sort to basically tell you please stop here. So you can use as many pins as you need to, or as few, depending on how used to sewing. If it's your first time, you'll always want to make sure you put more pins than less. If you're making these for like a team or something, then you can do a lot less if you're more used to the pattern and how your sewing machine works. You can see I have both ends double pinned, and then with pins in the middle as well. You can see both sides. Make sure your colorful side is facing in. That's going to be a key for this step. Okay, first we're going to take our strip that we just pinned. We're going to find one of the ends with the 2 pins, and then we're going to start there. We have a 5/8 seam allowance. Make sure you go to the right appropriate line on your sewing machine. Put it down. Normally I stitch this part around a 2 or so on the scale of 1 to 4 for sewing stitch size. We'll pull out the 2 pins and then we'll sew. When you get to a pin, you can always just remove it and then continue going, making sure that both edges are still aligned with each other. When you get to the double pins on the far side after you've stitched the whole thing, you're going to remove them and then stop right there. That'll give you enough to run the elastic through as like an opening then in it. So we'll finish it off right here. Then you can remove it and cut it. And now we have this nice long strip right here, just a nice seam all the way down. The next step we're going to do once we have sewn this seam is we're going to turn it right side out. Now you have a nice long strip, and this will be your outside that you'll see once it's all scrunched up. Your next step of what you're going to do is you're going to take the 2 edges here. You're going to align the corners, right sides together again, just like the first pinning that we did. You're going to take it, line it up here. And you're going to start pinning all the way down. You can use as many or as few pins as you see fit. I find this part often slightly hard just with you're working with a lot of bunchy fabric on the one end. Remember, you do still have a 5/8 seam allowance for this. If you are running on some shorter lengths of fabric, like this one's 21 inches long, the entire piece that we did. But if you were running on like a 20 or something, 20-inch long piece, you could always do a smaller seam allowance here, maybe a half instead. 5/8 is a very common seam allowance for sewing, so a lot of patterns recommend it. It's good because it gives you a nice base of fabric to work with. Once we're done pinning, you'll see this entire edge is pinned. We're going to take it and we're going to stitch right across right here. You'll want to make sure the part you're sewing stays smooth. This part can stay how it is though. If your edges, like mine, don't line up exactly, that's perfectly fine. Remember, you have that 5/8 seam allowance that you're going to be closing this with, so you can have a little buffer on either side as well if you don't quite line up perfectly. Then we'll tuck that in right here. Then we'll move on to stringing the elastic through. Okay, next we're going to take our 1/4 inch elastic. I'm going to take it out. We're going to measure about Normally about 7 inches. It does determine how stretchy your scrunchie will be. So a lot of people will vary it if they want it more or less scrunchy. But normally I do about 7 inches, so we'll measure it right here. We'll cut it. I like cutting a lot of these at the same time and just keeping them in like a bag or something if I'm going to be doing a lot of scrunchies back to back, whether it be for a team or... Then we'll work on threading the elastic through the actual scrunchie next. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take 2 little safety pins, and we're going to take these and we're going to put one in each end of the elastic right here. And then the second end that you put, and close them. The second end you're going to hook it on right here on your scrunchie so both ends don't go through the entire thing. Then you're going to run this right through your entire scrunchie. Once you get your end all the way through, you're going to unclip your other end. And this is the part where you could hand stitch these two together. I often find I can machine stitch them. I'll show you a trick I did with it. So you're going to take the safety pin, you're basically going to cross them over like this where it's a crossover. Then you're going to safety pin both layers. Then likewise you're going to do it on the other side. This gives you something to grab and stretch onto for your sewing machine when you're sewing them. So now we're going to stitch right here on our machine. Okay, next we're going to be stitching this right here, so it's kind of hard to see, but what we're going to do, we're going to try to basically hook it underneath and just lower your foot down. And basically we're going to go forward and back on here multiple times till you think you have a solid thing. This does not have to look good, it doesn't have to look perfect or anything because it's going inside the scrunchie. So you don't have to worry much about looks. Normally I put this on about 1.5 or so. Once you think it's nice and secure, you can cut it, and now you'll see there's a couple loops here in the back, but it's okay. And then we have the front right here. You're going to take the safety pins out at this point, and now you have connected elastic. You can trim the ends if they feel a little too long as well. The next step we're going to do, we're going to put the elastic and any threads and anything inside, and we're going to pull it tight. Then we're going to pin it on this like basically continued seam. So at this point you could either slip stitch, which wouldn't necessarily be the best idea if you're going to do a lot of these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the outside edge right here. It's going to show slightly, but it goes a lot faster and it'll give a lot more, it'll be a lot easier if you're going to use it for like making 10 or 15 for like a volleyball or basketball team. So we're going to pin it again. I like starting by matching these two seams right here to each other and then going out either direction from there. And again, you can add as many or as few pins as you need. And your goal is to get as close to the edge with still staying on the fabric. Sometimes near the end I like doubling back just to make sure I have everything. Then you can check it over, make sure it all looks good. Then you can fluff it out, and there you have the scrunchie. You can adjust the size of the elastic for the person if you want a bigger one, you know, but they'll end up looking very similar to that. The last thing you're gonna do is you're gonna cut the little random threads that you have around it and trim them up. And there you have nice little fun scrunchie. Thanks for watching this tutorial on how to sew a pretty simple scrunchie. Subscribe if you want as well for more fun sewing content too. Thanks. Bye.